Okay, so welcome back to episode 2 of the tutorials, and in this tutorial we're actually going to go over like player movement. Player movement, and so you can actually walk on the level and interact. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the player character, so right here. Where we left off is I showed you what the begin play and what the event tick does. Basically, with the event, we showed you the event begin play only calls once, event tick calls twice, or call every second in the game. And we actually ain't going to be using any of these in this video, so we're going to drag it to the side. For the purpose of this, all we're going to be doing is movement, the very basic movement, and adding it so you can actually walk on the level. I'm going to do this as a first person. So we'll start first in the viewport, and if you remember, the viewport is what you actually see of what the player is. So in the viewport, if you press the add in top left, and then you type in spring arm, and for this I'm just going to call it camera arm, just so we know what it is. But instead of clicking off, just click the add again, while it's still on in blue, and just search camera, and do a normal camera. And you can just call this player view if you want, or player cam, we'll call it player. Click play camera. If you can see, this is what you want it to do. You want it to be so the camera is parented to the camera arm, and you know it's parented by this little arrow here. That's how you know it's parented. And now this is actually not first person, so if you bring the camera arm up like this and bring it forward, and then if you see here, you've got your target arm length. If you then set that to 0, you now have a first person camera. But before we actually code anymore, you need to come to here where it says camera settings, by scrolling down your details panel, and tick use pawn controller rotation. And I will, when we actually get to actually showing the function that actually works, I'll explain exactly what it does. So next, we physically, there is two ways you can do movement. You've got a really very weird way of doing it, where you can just type in keyboard events. You could technically do it this way, but we're also going to do it a simpler way. So if you press edit in the top left, you go down to project settings, and open up this. Then if you click on all settings, you're going to type in input. Oh, not input. You can type something. Well, it's either under input, but it's right here. Just go down and you'll see it. You've got action mapping, which is basically for jumping, interacting. And active mapping is what you use for moving around. So we're going to add 4 axis mappings by pressing this plus 4 times, and we're going to name the first one's going to be move forward, the second one's going to be move right, the third one's going to be look up, and this one is going to be 10. And because we're also going to add sprinting, you click plus on the action mappings and just add sprint. We can also add jumping, so actually we'll do the second one, call it jump. Now, these are mapped on here, they actually don't do anything because we have no mapping on them. So if you press the down arrows on them, you can see, you can type a key out, so sprint would be shift, you can just type it, or you can click on this little keyboard, press the button you want, it'll go there, and I'll just do that. You can do left shift, space, or whatever you want your buttons to be. And then for your actual axis mappings, you open them all up. For move forward, this plus here, press it, same with move right, so there is 2 input values for forward and back. So it'll be W, S, and then A, or D, A. But where it says S and A, put the scale value to -1. So basically it's opposite, and it's negative, it's basically 1 does forward, 1 does backwards, left, right, etc. A look up, we're going to do mouse X, and I believe that is also, I believe that was also -1, and then turn was mouse Y. Now we've done this, if we now go to click off that and go back to this, if you right click and search for move forward, you get this input axis move forward, just gives you the execution node, which calls every time you press W or you press S. And then you got your axis value, which basically is it 1 or -1. That's basically what it is. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted it to variable on accident. So with this, now you want to drag off this white pin and search add movement, movement input. You should get this node called add movement input, target is pawn, target self, world direction, scale value, and force. What you want to do is you want to grab your axis value, drag it into the green pin. And you also, in your components panel, where you got this, grab your capsule component here, hold left click, drag it into the scene, and drag off this blue pin here, drag off that, and then you want to do get forward vector, and then you connect that to the world direction. The reason you do it like this instead of just, there is another way to do it, but the reason you do it like this instead of just right clicking, splitting it, and just connecting it to where you want it, is when you actually turn your camera, it doesn't actually change what your forward, basically which way is actually forward. So the reason you do that is just so it's actually forward. So now I can just reconnect this back up. And if you hold left click, highlight all of it, and then press C, it'll comment it. So this is move forwards and backwards. This is move forward and backwards. And if you go underneath that, and then you search move right, we do the exact same thing. Is you get the movement input, so we can just Control C, Control V, cut that, cut that. You still want to get your capture component like this, but instead of get forward vector, this time you want to get right vector. So that just changes if which way is left, which one's right. And now if you count this one, this is then move right and left. And if we go ahead and if we press play, we attempt to do this, you see it actually doesn't work because we're forgetting one thing. If we go here in our blueprints panel again, you right click, do a new blueprint class, and do a game mode base. That's basically what sets the mode of the game, which allows you to use your character. Do that, you can just call this player underscore GM or whatever you want to call it. And then if you open that up now, you'll get this. All you want is this section right here, default pawn class. You want to set that to your character. That's all you got to do. Then just compile that, press and compile. You can then close that. And what I said in our last episode, if you minimize when it comes up this, so in the last episode about this, which is setting the game mode. There's two ways that you can do project game mode. So that means every level's got the same game mode, which you don't want. You've got the world game mode, which is just for that level. If you highlight over it, you get create, you get select. Select game mode base class, player underscore GM. Basically now, because that isn't saved, because I'm set as, we can actually set it to player start, so we'll just set it to player start. If we now press play, you can see forward, back, left, right. We can now forward, back, left, right. You can't do anything else like jump, look around, or anything yet, because that isn't actually implemented. So we're going to implement that now. So now if you open up your player again, you can now come underneath and then do look up. See the look up. Now the looking around is way different to the way movement is. So if you grab off the axis value and then just search add pitch, add controller pitch input. Basically means it goes up and down, and then if you get the turn one, make sure it is the axis event, and then you do add controller your input. So now if we now press play, I have done this correctly. Okay, I have actually done this backwards, so that's my bad. Go back to project settings, go back to input, and actually switch these around. So this is mouse Y, this is mouse Y, and this is mouse X. This may also be wrong when it comes to negatives. There we go. Now it's correct. It's mouse Y, mouse X instead of mouse X with Y. But now you can look up, look down, look left, look right, and then move forward, back, left to right. And if you move around, this. And if I show you what I meant by with the movement now, actually, just because I've got looking around, I'll break these links real quick, and then split this, and connect this to this X, I believe it was. And I try move. You see, it's actually backwards because it doesn't get the true. I'm holding S right now to go forward, and then do to back. It's actually, we'll try look. It's still going to be the exact same no matter what. That's why you use the forward vector, so it always stays the way that the camera is looking. That's always going to be the forward vector. Always going to be forward vector. Every time, always the forward vector. So now, if we actually, we can comment this and just call this look around. That's basically what it is. Look around. There we go. So now, okay, let's add jumping. Because jump is easy. If you just set up jump and get your action event, and then you can just get off where it says pressed. Just search jump. You'll get this. You don't have to, but if you want to, on released, just put stop jumping if you wanted to. You don't physically have to. It don't really make a difference. If you want to, you can. But for this purpose, I'll do it, and then just comment and jump. There you go. And then, basically, the last thing we've got to do now is add just sprinting, which can be done in a few different ways. I'm going to show you the 2 ways and do a bit of explanation with each one as well. So the very basic way to do it is if you get the action event that you created for your running, whatever you call it, sprint, run, speed up, whatever you call it, you get the exact same you get with the jump, pressed, released, and then your key, which you never actually really use. There's 2 ways to do it. You can either get the character movement and then just set the max walk speed like this, and then you just set it in here, which is a float value. And if you don't know what a float is basically, let's do this over here. If I am not very good at drawing, so I'll just this. A float is basically any number from 0. It can be to 100, but it's also every number in between. It's 0, 1, 2, or it's 0, but in between it's also 1. It also has decimals as well. It also does decimal numbers, not just normal numbers. Now if I quickly select all this and just delete it. Yep. Basically a float is decimal numbers, and then you've got what was the other one? And then you've got integer, which is whole numbers, which is just the same as a float, just whole numbers instead. So this is the easy way to do it, basically. The default walk speed is always going to be 600, unless you change it by going to click on character movement and scroll down till you find max walk speed. You can see 600 centimeters per second, which is what the default is. So for sprinting, we'll say put this. Oh, I opened up. Okay, let me just close this real quick. You're always going to set the default. I mean, apparently the default is depends what you set your sprinting at. Because ours is 600, we'll set it to 900. But then, even when you let go now, it's always going to be sprinting, unless you just duplicate this, set to release, make sure you hook up this to the target, and then just set it back to what the default walk speed is. So now, if we actually press play, if I hold shift, you can see the character speeds up a little bit. If I make it a bit quicker, make it a little bit more noticeable. Now if I hold shift, you can see it's actually gotten quicker. And you go spacebar, of course you jump, and you can look around and sprint around. Basically, this is a very basic Right there is the very basic character movement. So we can actually go ahead and close this, because character movement is actually now done. But before we end the video, I want to go over one more thing. You've got your different variables. If I show you, that's project settings. Yeah, you've got your different variable types. Let's go to variables. Your different variable types. The main ones you will use for basic like movement and animations is integers, floats, and booleans. You already know what an integer and a float is. Floats, decimal numbers, integers, whole numbers. A boolean is, let's write this down, save me actually doing it. So, boolean, I don't remember if I spelled this wrong. Boolean is basically, yeah, yes or no, or it's true or false. In some terms, it's just true or false. So let's just write false. In most terms, yes or no, or it's true and false. But mainly you go based off true or false. That's what Boolean is. It's basically, is it on, is it not, is it true, or is it false? That's basically what it is. You only really use them for basic stuff. They're used for a lot of things actually, and then also for a lot of other things as well. So that is now, if we comment this, we can now call this sprint or run, whatever you want to call it, and then let's set that right here. Now, the reason why I told you to, in your viewport with your spring on, which we called camera on, the reason I said tick this box, because if you don't, I'll show you, it does this, right? As much as you try pushing it up and down, it won't go down. It'll do left and right, but never up and down. So then re-ticking that box is what then allows you to go up, down, left, right. Basically what it allows you to do. And then that's done. Go ahead and save that. Let me just save. I don't need to save that. We'll just save this. There we go. So that is now saved. And so what we're going to do is we're going to end this episode here, and then in the next episode we will go over the basic animations of a player, getting a player model in and setting up player animations. That's the simplest way you can do it. So we'll do that as well. We might do health system as well. We'll do that in the next episode. So till then, I hope you all have an amazing day.